And here we go. Hello, friends, and welcome into a special live stream here at Michigan Golf Live. It is currently Wednesday night at 7 o'clock, and I do believe that across all of the Michigan Golf Live social channels on Facebook and X and YouTube and Instagram, we're all gathered together seeing the same live stream. And as we get together, and those of you who have been kind of following the story that we're telling here for the last couple of days, you know we are coming together for a kind of a unique purpose, and that is to either celebrate or at least investigate and talk about and discuss this most unique moment in high school golf history. It was just a couple of days ago that a young man who, by the way, throughout the course of our live stream today, we aren't going to name him. Okay, I just want you all to understand we won't be using his name. I don't want to single anybody out for any reason, especially a minor. So we're going to be very careful about that. And there are a lot of people who are wondering, why aren't we just, why are we even spending time talking about what we're talking about? There's a lot of conversation about that right now that has been flowing throughout social media. And as we get into our live stream, I want to take a moment to sort of set the scene for you all so that you understand where we're going with all of this. I have other guests who are going to be joining us in just a couple of moments. Looking forward to the conversation with some who have been involved in the high school and in the amateur golf world for a very long time. But first and foremost, let me take you to the initial impetus for what we're doing here today. And that was the posting of a score from a young man who attends Anchor Bay High School, and he shot a 60 on a par 71 course. I think we would all agree that's pretty darn remarkable. And so as that score went live and conversations began to flow and people began to think, wow, that's got to be like an all-time record. It's got to be. If it's not, it's super close to that. And so people began to want to make sure that there was some legitimacy to that score. Unfortunately, because there's a history that goes into not this young man, but into the school, a couple of the schools involved in all this. So there's the leaderboard that was posted from the I Wanna Maker app. I've blurred out the names, but you can see the scores on the right side, and they're pretty impressive, especially at the top of the leaderboard with a 60. So when that goes up, questions begin to be asked. Over 200 and I think 20,000 views across all of the MGL channels. There is a pretty good mix. I won't say it's 50-50, but there's a pretty good mix of people who are questioning the veracity of that score. And there are some who are questioning my sanity for even having the conversation. And there's a mix of, all of the above. One of my favorite comments came in a little bit earlier today from Jenna. She says, maybe you should just be celebrating his achievement. It's sad that you feel compelled to do this. Well, Jenna, and to the others who have that opinion, let me just share with you why we're having the conversation. Because if that is a legitimate historical record score that can stand up to scrutiny, then there should be a pretty sizable celebration for this young man. There should be a parade of college coaches sprinting to his front door for the purpose of recruiting this young man, because you don't see a lot of 60s come up these days, right? So there are reasons for the conversation. And one of them is we're not here to convict or condemn. We're here to kind of have a conversation about whether or not we can verify that this took place. I did reach out to the athletic director at Anchor Bay. Have never had a response from that person. I don't know how. I don't know why. I did reach out to the head coach, Joe Schmidt, and I got a couple of responses from him that I'm going to share with you now. He says, I understand a score like that naturally gets some questioning, but I can say without hesitation, the record was legitimate. It was played in a tournament setting with coaches, players, and score verification in place throughout the day. And he also had a small gallery following him for essentially the entire round. Even despite an 81 earlier this season, people may not realize the level of talent he has. The 60 also followed up match scores earlier in the week of 32 and 34, so he's been playing extremely well lately. It also happened to come on our home course where he's extremely comfortable and has played countless rounds. Yesterday was just one of those days where everything clicked at once. I've been around high school golf a long time, and it's the best stretch of golf that I have witnessed personally. And then part two of his comment is, just for the record, to clarify, I was not the host coach for the event and had no involvement in setting up the course or determining the tees that were played. That was handled by the tournament host and site. I'm not going to speculate on anonymous comments from others. The round was played in a tournament setting. I'm fully confident in the legitimacy of the score. That's great. And I invited the coach to come on the program, and he ghosted me ever since I extended the invitation, I think 5 different times, including earlier today. I just want that to be on the record. I want to have the coach on. I've tried my best to have the coach on. I can't make the coach come on. I have no idea why he wouldn't even respond with a polite decline. He chose not to, so all I have to go by are the comments that he sent. Now, we're going to bring in our guests here in just a moment, but I want to take you all through one more kind of preamble to set up where we're headed, because I certainly appreciate the confidence that the coach provides. There's a mobile site, there's an app out there that helps analyze the statistical probability of scores like this happening. Now, a couple of things, and we'll talk about this with our guests here in just a couple of moments. Number one, the young man has no scoring record in the GIN app. There's nothing. There's one score posted for, as far as I can tell, forever, and it was an 83. So there's no way to know what his actual index would be. So in this app that does statistical probability calculations, we decided to put him through just put it through kind of a test filter and put him in as a 15 handicap. In other words, what are the odds that somebody who might be a 15 would ever shoot 11 under par, regardless of the facility, the length, and the setup? For a 15, according to the app, the score is practically impossible. So I thought, well, okay, I get it. For a 15, that's really tough. How about for somebody whose index is a 5? Does it change anything? If we go to a 5, we have the same outcome. Then I thought, if you're going to talk about going 11 under par, then you probably ought to be looking at somebody who's a scratch golfer. So we put the scratch index into the calculator, and this was a fascinating calculation that it made, that somebody who is scratch would shoot this score once every 5,214 years. Okay. I don't think I've ever seen a calculation quite like that. So with all of that lead in, let me bring in and introduce you to our panel of experts that we are going to be talking with here for the next several minutes here on the live stream. And I'm glad to have every one of them here with us. Let me first introduce you to my friend Terry Kilday, who has been officiating at the amateur level, the high school golf level, for a very long time. Terry, I don't know how many years you count in your world of officiating, but it's a good number, correct?
Yes, and sad to say 25 years started here in January.
Well, thank you for your service. That's a lot of golf, man. That is a lot of golf. Rob McIntyre is a former high school golf coach. Rob, let me bring you into this and kind of give you a chance to just kind of share with everybody your background and what brings you into the conversation.
So I was a high school golf coach for Grosse Pointe South. I was the head coach for 15 years, and I was assistant coach for 5 years. We had some success, but most notably, we won the state title the same year in 2018 that we had a little controversy with Anchor Bay High School, if we can go back that far. But those are separate events in my mind. It's just that we have some familiarity with controversy. Let's say controversy.
Yeah, I'm going to bring you in for some more detail on that in a couple of minutes. I think we have Terry's brother, Mick, trying to figure out his camera. We'll come back to Mick in a second. And we have Tom Lang from the Michigan Golf Journal. And Tom is actually the one who initially sent me this leaderboard that showed the 60. Tommy's having some camera issues, but he is with us in audio form. Tom, welcome, and thanks for joining us. Let me give you kind of the floor to start things off here as to what your thoughts were when you first saw the 60, as somebody who also covered what Rob alluded to 8 years ago with the verified controversy involving Anchor Bay and Lance Cruz. Tom, can you hear me? All right. We're having a heck of a time with Tom. Rob, let's come back to you. And you take us back to that time in 2018. Okay. There were remarkable records being claimed and set that did not prove out when they got to region or to the state final. So take us back 8 years ago.
So in 2018, I was playing in a different region. The region that Lance Cruz, Anchor Bay, also had a huge number of talented teams in it. Lake Orion, Bloomfield. There were just I think Rochester Adams was in there. I'm pretty sure Rochester Adams was in there. And during the regional finals, Anchor Bay and Lance Cruz finished first and second. And I think it was, I can't remember if Lake Orion finished third, but the discrepancy in scores from the ones posted during the regional compared to the scores posted for Lance Cruz and Anchor Bay were huge. They were tremendous. And I think Anchor Bay posted a 286, 284. It was in the 280 something or others, but just incredibly low scores for a regional. And then when they got to state finals, it was an average of 25 strokes a player more as soon as they made it to the state finals. And there's some situations I noticed during state finals because we were paired with Anchor Bay on day one. And I think we'll get to rules and rule familiarity later. And I think that was one of the issues that they had. But it's something that happened that some high school golfers really remember. It was a big event those years ago, 8 years ago.
And to be entirely fair to all concerned parties with this round, that was 8 years ago. Nobody still with these programs is involved unless somebody had some really, nobody's involved, right? So different kids, I believe different coaches, I'm guessing just kind of different across the board. The only similarity would be that we have a couple of the same schools that are involved in all this. And Terry Kilday, as somebody who has seen literally everything, and I would think at some point would write the book about everything. How did this strike you when you first saw the story and you began to kind of take a look into it?
Well, I was the rules official at the regional that Coach referred to. And then because of the controversy there and, the differential was just out of sight, I was also the lead rules official at Grand Valley, the site for the state finals that year where the schools competed. And we did have rules officials walk with every one of their team members and just kept score. And like Coach said, it went from that, I believe the number was either 67 or 69 in regionals. The best score they posted in states was a 92. And again, as Coach said, it took Rochester Adams out of a chance to even go to state finals and stuff. So it was heartbreaking. The evidence was very, very plain. And the thing that bothered me is just adults wouldn't get involved with it, from parents of the players to the coaches to the athletic director of the respective schools. Everyone just decided they were going to let it slide rather than, face the music with it.
And, Terry, you've been a part of so many of these moments where scores are questioned at the end of a round, especially in a championship setting at the state level. But this would be sort of what we would call a regular season round. So it doesn't necessarily usually rise to the attention level of the entire state because it doesn't impact as many other schools. Having said that, a 60, pretty impressive, pretty darn impressive. And for the most part, let me just give you my 30,000-foot observations and you can color in your thoughts, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that somebody who is talented enough to shoot that low of a score is a very serious golfer, a very talented golfer, and probably would have or should have an established scoring record that you could see, whether it's in the Gin app or throughout their high school career. Now, I could be wrong. And again, I want the record to indicate I invited the coach on 5 times. I have no idea why Joe Schmidt wouldn't come on the live stream. But I would like to think that maybe there's just been an oversight in record keeping or something. How does somebody come out of the blue with their only posted score being an 83 and somehow come up with this number?
So, if I can chirp in here a little bit, it is the wacky world of high school golf too, and to understand like how some teams in the MAC tend to play things, they have their different tournaments that they play in, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that it's understanding how many actual scores get posted and how much they're involved with tournaments outside their actual area. And so that's where like I want to Maker really does help in terms of seeing like patterns evolve through players.
It's a very good point. I want to share a comment I got earlier today from a PGA professional who works in junior golf quite a bit, and she's one of the top instructors in the state. And she actually said the iWannamaker app is really not any deterrent because you can go back at the end of the round or later on during the round and say, I think you got my score wrong back here. She says last month in the U.S. Kids event, I caddied, and one boy in his group shaved off a few strokes because we didn't keep the score for him. Mistakes were made, and then the iWannamaker app didn't prove to be the confirmation that we had hoped it would be. She said, I was more sad that young man, whether accidental or on purpose, cheated during the round with a parent standing right there. Now, I don't want to cast aspersions at our young man from Anchor Bay. I don't want to use the C word. All right. I want to have the discussion because if it's a legitimate 60, that ought to be recognized. I think it's a new state record. Tom Lang from the Michigan Golf Journal has chimed in with us now. Hey, Tom, we can see you. You're looking good. And you've done a lot of homework in the last few days on all of this. What do you want to begin with?
Can you hear me?
We can.
All right. Progress with my old technology, apparently. Well, the reason this caught my eye is because the prior lowest score in a regular season 18-hole match that I ever heard about in the state was Randy Hutchison from Traverse City Central back in around 2003, shot a 62. And the people who let me know about it said in the very next breath, but it was a nothing course, so let's not get too excited about it. They were like already saying too short of a course to be legitimate, no challenge. So of course he shot 62. Well, Randy went on to be all Big Ten at Michigan State. He was the highest amateur in one of the Michigan Opens at the Bear. He took 3rd overall in the Michigan Open against pros, and finished as top amateur at 3 under par on the Grand Traverse. So for somebody to beat his score, even to do 60, it just seemed pretty tough to swallow, to be honest, in my opinion.
So, Terry, as we talk about all of these things, if you are the tournament official on site at this gathering and that score comes into you, is there a role for the tournament official on property to play, or is the responsibility to the players and coaches?
I think it's all of us. And I would surely, and I tried to, back when the coach was referring to 8 years ago, I tried to get involved in stuff. But if you do not get the support of the coaches, and in particular, the player in question's coach, because he knows his scoring range, and it's so hard to deviate out of that range. If you don't get that support, it gets to the point where my hands are tied. But, I think if and I'm conjecturing here, but if I was on site for this one, when that 60 came, I just wouldn't let the scores be posted. We'd make every effort to get to the bottom of it, even if it was just a match, because, it's harming everybody and the young man himself and his school. It's just not there. And so I think all the adults in the room or in the scoring area, however we want to phrase it, they needed to get involved.
So, is there a minimum golf course length and or setup that is in place or should be in place that would at least get you through that minimum threshold for course challenge and difficulty before you would recognize in a record setting way around like a 60? I don't know what the parameters are right now that would help everybody say, oh, the litmus test has been cleared. Even if we don't have a scoring record on this young man, at least we know it was a legitimate round. And I believe, Tom or Rob, that he has since gone out and played a longer course, and probably a little more realistic score came from it.
Yeah, Rob looked that up. So go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, well, the first is, what is the standard length? And I can tell you from when we would start looking at all state selections and things like that, it's about 6,000 yards.
Okay.
And there is no actual hard and fast rule to that. But when you actually go through the all-state process, they do ratings, of course. There are yardage referrals. It actually does level out the playing field when you're playing longer courses versus shorter courses. There are coaches throughout the state who actually falsify the however long it is and make the course shorter than it actually is on the scorecard. That's a whole different subject. But the one thing I did notice, that the player today went out and played a course at 6,200 yards. Now, when he shot the 60 at Golden Hawk, I think it was about 5,600 yards. So he goes out today, and I'm out of curiosity, I'm just going to see this poor kid's got to be under a lot of pressure, right? So, and he went out there and he shot a 76, going 3 over in the last 2 holes. So if he can do that under pressure, because he's got to be feeling some pressure, I think that it takes a little bit of wonder out of or speculation. Might alleviate some speculation, because if he's shooting 76 or 5,600, which would be below what we would calculate or accept normally for all state, and it wouldn't be knocking anybody out of anything. And then he comes back 2 days later, kind of with a bunch of eyeballs on him, and goes out and shoots a very good score. That's a really good score.
Yeah.
For 6,200 yards. Yeah, that's I think that's important to understand, important to take a look at.
While we've been talking, we've had the chat opened for our live stream off to the side. Someone named Mike3 is a big fan. Clearly, he says only golf can create this much buzz over a high school kid having the round of his life. People need to grow up, including yourself. I guess that's me. No one wants to join your program because this is a joke. You're a joke. And Mike, I would just say it's actually apostrophe RE on that last your. So check that out. A little bit later on, Rangefinder 01X says, I have never seen more plus golfers shoot in the 80s now. Go back to the old handicap system, which leads me, Terry, to a question to you while Mike thinks of his next comment. I'm curious if in the MHSAA realms, if we have high school kids engaged enough in an official handicap program where they're actually registering scores. They don't have to. I know the MHSAA the GAM for a long time has provided free memberships to high school kids so they can have a USGA index. But what is the status of that right now so that we can have a scoring record? Unlike we don't have any scoring record for the young man who has posted the 60.
Right. Well, there's no requirement by MHSAA that they maintain a handicap index, as you just stated, to participate in GAM events. they do post scores and they establish an index. So there's just so much peer pressure. If we just let it happen as the threesome or the foursome goes out and let's just watch each other, it doesn't happen. And I think, Bill, the next step is that they encourage players, you can get an index just with the scores you post during high school events, even if they didn't most of the summer. And most high school golfers playing most of the summer. So it's a nice step in the right direction.
Yeah. A couple more comments have come in. Jenny Camerl Heath is a very big fan of our live chat as well. She says, boring. This is ridiculous. Give the kid the credit he deserves. He had a great round. Jenny, that's exactly what we're discussing. Because the next comment, I think, really is pertinent to what Jenny said. Do we know if schools are recruiting this kid right now? And that brings me to my next question. And Tommy, I'll throw it to you because you had a brief conversation with a coach that you don't have to name if you don't want to, but a Big Ten golf coach. And you said, have you heard about this? Because the natural assumption would be that for somebody to go 11 under par would result in a sprint-a-thon of college golf coaches to his front door saying, please come for our program. Was that the experience relayed to you?
No, the Big Ten coach that I was texting back and forth with said, this is ridiculous and high school needs to get a grip on how they handle this kind of stuff. That he later said, if he truly did it, good for him. And I say the same thing. If he truly did it, great for him.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I would be the first to pat him on the back if he becomes the Michael Jordan of golf and doesn't even get on the varsity till almost high school season's over and he goes on to greatness. But that's one thing. This
is a young man that was not on the varsity team last year, as we understand it.
That's correct. He's a senior now, and he might have played in like 2 varsity events last year, but he was mostly JV. And I've also been talking to Jared Ramsey of the Detroit Free Press because he's interested in this. He reached out to every high school coach that was at that tournament last Friday. Only a couple of them got back to him. They're not like, they're not. It's not like they're hiding, but they're not responding. Like the Anchor Bay coach didn't respond to you to join this telecast. So it makes me also wonder how much they all believe in it or if they don't. But a couple of them did respond to him, and they said the score is legitimate. One of the coaches even said he followed that group for 8 holes, and he saw 2 of the 3 eagles that were recorded. So that's fantastic. If the kid had a game of his life, I mean, I liken it back to a story I did about 8 years ago, where you always ask yourself, can you get a hole in one? It's almost impossible for everybody. But a married couple, husband and wife, got a hole in one back to back on the same hole. That might fall into that category of once every 1,500 years or something. Another story I did just last year, a man in Grand Rapids was doing one of those first tee marathons, and he had back-to-back holes in one in a span of about 9 holes. So the weird stuff happens, and it's kind of looking like the weird stuff happened in this case.
We had, I had a text, actually I had a phone call today from a number I did not recognize, eventually connected with him, and it was the father of Nick Carlson. Now, some of you who have been around the golf scene in Michigan for a while will remember the name of Nick Carlson because not only was he a fantastic high school golfer, he went on to play for the University of Michigan, but he was also it was either the semis or the finals of the USAM at Oakland Hills, semis. Well, Nick back in high school was at Diamond Springs, which is near Grand Rapids, and he went out and he shot a 62, but he had 10 coaches following him throughout play because they had him on 59 watch. And as I was exchanging messages with Mr. Carlson, who may be among those watching us right now, I explained to him that Nick had a scoring record, and people knew that Nick had that potential in him, which is why there were so many coaches out there that were going to go and walk along with him to see if he broke the record. Nick, by the way, still playing golf. He's overseas playing on one of the developmental tours. And Terry, I say that because I want to talk for a moment about scoring potential and whether it's related to our current conversation or just golf and the handicap world in general. Can you speak to the frequency with which a golfer is expected to post a score near his or her handicap, so it can kind of help us explore the clear aberration that we're exploring here with this 60?
Right. The USGA has done research on this ever since I was involved with golf, which is way too long ago and stuff. The percentage that I always hear and always read from them is 20 to 25% of your rounds will be equal to or less than your handicap for the course that day. So in other words, 3 out of 4 rounds, you're going to shoot higher than your handicap. 1 round, you'll shoot at your handicap or 1 or 2 strokes less. If you go 3 strokes or more or less than your handicap, it's rated as an exceptional score. And if you come up with 2 exceptional scores in a certain time frame, and I apologize, I don't know that time frame from the USGA, they'll put your handicap index under a restricted category. So yeah, it just you don't go below that established number. And again, as you said earlier, we don't have an established number with this player, but I don't think his index is plus 5, 6, 7, or 8.
So I got to chirp in here because I've looked at I Wanamaker, and like a couple big things for me is when that happened in 2018, we brought in the I Wanamaker system, and the primary thing we brought in the I Wanamaker system for was if something crazy was happening, people would be able to see it. They'd go out on the course and they'd watch it. So I think in this case, I Wanamaker did its job because there's a number of coaches, and as Tom referred to, 2 of those Eagles were watched. They saw that, right? So if we look at I Wanamaker and we just go back at his rounds, even his 9-hole rounds, this kid lights up Golden Hawk like no other. Okay, so he plays his 9-hole matches, and let's just face it, it is not the toughest course on earth, right? So when we take a look and we start piecing things together, he's playing his home course. It's set up at 5,600 yards. He knows every corner to cut. He's got everything just by just looking at what probably happened here. Now, am I saying he shot a 60? I don't know, right? But to go into like treating this as like it's a 6,500 yard course that he's playing, it's par 71. I mean, that's not fair to this kid either, right? So we got to keep these things in perspective, because like when we look at his scores at his home course there, and I don't know, they like half of those par 4s are drivable, especially if there's a corner to cut. So I like, for me, all my coach buddies are like, "Oh my God, you're defending Anchor Bay? That's unbelievable, right?" Like, but I am, right. I think this is possible, and I have to say that, right?
Yeah.
I just have to say
I'm
that.
glad you did. And, I tried to make this really clear in the video I put up to promote tonight. Some people choose to read and watch. Some people choose to just be reflexively angry and whatever. But I said we're not gathering together to condemn anybody. We're having a discussion about probability, and if it's true, if it all happened, then man, there should be a massive celebration. Somebody should be getting a plaque. There's been a lot of golf played in this state over the past 100+ years, and if we have a new scoring record, we should probably talk about it and celebrate it. I'm just still uneasy with whether or not this was accurate, and Terry, I think, is kind of leaning in that direction as well, as a guy who has literally seen everything in this game. Let me bring a couple more comments from our chat back in. Dawn Marie says Rob's comment was great. He went out today and did another great job golfing despite all the scrutiny he was under. Vire Golf, love the show. Yeah, love the show. For what it's worth, another golfer in the group, not on A-B team, stated that he missed an 8-foot birdie putt on the back nine to post a 59. So even if he cheated or shaved 5 strokes, a 65 is fire. Well, I don't know if I want to go with that as my defense, but okay. Jenny Heath steps back in and decides that she's going to swear on my live stream. I don't know why, but she says, like, grow up, Jenny. Really, Steve, who the blank are you to judge? Were you there? His opponent verified his score. But Jenny, I would just say this, that 8 years ago with these same 2 schools, the opponents all verified the score as well. And it proved to be a complete debacle. At Mr. WMU, the golf coach could have brought his resume to prove his pedigree. It is telling that he refused to join the show. If any of us were in his position, there's no length we'd go. There's no length we'd not go to prove the score. That's one of the little, Tommy, you could tell me if I'm crazy. It wouldn't be the first time you've told me this.
Nope.
That's one of the little red flags in my mind is where's the celebration?
Right.
Where's the party? As Steve Castle says, why isn't the coach speaking out? Why are they not celebrating this unbelievable accomplishment? That's one of those things that kind of has me a little confused. And
Sure.
yeah,
Well,
so
the feedback
Tom,
that
go ahead.
the feedback that Jared Ramsey of the Free Press got from a couple of coaches was he was definitely attracting attention. And by the time he was finishing up on 17 and 18, there were almost 24 people there watching, seeing if he would like get the 59 or whatever. And so there were a lot of eyeballs out there. There's no question about it. But what we don't know and nobody has talked about is, were they playing maybe preferred lies? That kind of thing that really helped him hit the ball maybe better than he ever will again. And
Well-
so that's all part of it too.
but also assuming that every other player out there also had the same condition. So
True.
there was also a 67 posted. And, Terry, I do look to you. I have some great experiences with Terry and his brother Mick officiating tournaments where I've been playing and where I have foolishly not asked the official for my options. Instead, I just kind of decided what they were to my own disadvantage. And I'll always remember I think it was Mick who said to me, I can't tell you what you don't ask. So Terry, I'm going to ask you something, which is if this were instead of a Michigan Golf live stream, if this were an episode of Judge Judy and you were a judge, you're banging the gavel down in which direction on this particular case? Are we supposed to be celebrating a 60 is my question to you.
I'd like to say yes if there's enough evidence for it. I think it's an incredible feat. In the Pro Tour, the whole world knows about anybody shooting 59. So, for a high school golfer to post this number, and I guess the only thing I'd couch my reply with is I'd sure like to, see the evidence there and some veracity to it.
We just got a comment in from Melissa Goik, who says that 67, which was the second place score, was posted by somebody in the same group. Now, again, I'm going to say this right now, in an unfair comparison, 8 years ago when the scandal took place with Anchor Bay and Lance Cruz, it all took place, the 3 lowest scores in the history of the state of Michigan all took place from the same group. So again, it's an unfair comparison. These are different people. These are different times, but Melissa's got a really good point. And as Steve Castle says, so we played great and shot 7 shots worse. John Shack says, my daughter will be going into her sophomore year. And as a freshman, she said, you would not believe the stroke shaving. I have followed and witnessed it and told her it will only hurt them in the long run. Rob,
Absolutely.
question for you. How often do you think that inaccurate scorekeeping, that's what I'll use as my euphemism for stroke shaving, how often do you think inaccurate scorekeeping is just a result of literally not knowing the rules versus having some sort of nefarious intent?
So the nefarious intent is that's so hard to really judge. The not knowing the rules part, all day. So and I think it's especially when you get to, less experienced golfers, they're used to going out and learning the game from relatives, friends, family, whatever. And they like prefer lies, roll the ball, winter rules, leaf rule, all these things, and then they bring that right into a competitive golf situation. So they might be shaving strokes, but they really don't know how bad they are doing it, right? They don't know to what degree they're jumping in on it. So in that case, I would always tell the people who are trying to bring young players along is it may be humiliating, but play by the rules, even though they're going to see that you're not that great, right? And if you don't know, just there's tutorial videos, there's plenty of things to look at as you go along, because again, just getting young people to fall in love with the game. But I think they carry over some of the casualness into competitive golf in high school until they get corrected or caught. So the intent, I don't know, but it's the not knowing the rules is a huge portion of it. It was actually a huge portion of it way back in 2018, as one of my players pointed out when he was taking score for another player from Anchor Bay that first day, that the player didn't know the rules, which inflated his score. And my player identified to me before he teed off on the next hole. He goes, "Yeah, he really didn't know. He really didn't know, coach." And it cost him several strokes. So that's like, if anything, like if you're going out, you're working with younger people, play by the rules, because they'll carry that over a little bit further.
I can remember back in my days as a high school golf assistant coach for about 8 years, a couple of instances where the rules were shockingly not applied, including I was out walking with a match and a kid hit a ball, quite a ways to the right. It was way out of play. And the next thing I know, but it was a lateral hazard. He was dropping a ball in the middle of the fairway, like 50 yards up further and dead center of the fairway. And I didn't say much because it was clear that the young man was going to have a rough day anyways. But I just said, could you, and I wasn't his coach. So I said, could you help me understand how you decided to drop the ball in the middle of the fairway? And he said, yeah, coach said if we ever hit it out of bounds, to throw it in the middle of the fairway. I was like, well, I can't be mad at the kid if that's how he was being taught. Obviously, he was being taught incorrectly. And at the same time, I can recall, because boys golf in Michigan is played in weather like this garbage instead of in the fall when it should be. I remember spending the first like 2 or 3 weeks with our team in a classroom, just drawing diagrams on the board and going through rulings on dog legs and things like that. And then going outside into real golf and realizing how much time I had wasted in the classroom because they were not applying the things that we had. There was so much confusion out there, and I don't have any hair, or else I'd be pulling it out. So, Tom, when we talk about knowledge of the rules versus creative or deficient scorekeeping, what's your
Can I
thought
say one
on?
more thing, Bill?
Yeah, Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, and the one thing is, if you know the rules, you understand when other people really are shaving strokes. So you're a better scorekeeper for your opposition at the same time. It's not just about you. You understand when they're taking strokes off.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's a
sorry.
very good point. Tom, what were you going to say?
Or rephrase the question again for me.
What do you see as the mix on the scale of justice between not knowing the rules and knowing the rules, but adjusting your score anyways?
From what I hear in all the talk I've had with coaches and all the observations I've made of kids playing in state tournaments and whatnot, I think an extremely small percentage go out with the intention of cheating. I think the majority of the wrong scores are not knowing the rules, not adding up the way you should, the missed drops, not in the right place that give you an advantage for the rest of your scoring. I think that happens a lot from what I hear, especially the drops. They don't know where to do it, and they give themselves a huge advantage, like middle of the fairway. So I think the vast majority of kids don't want to cheat, But I do think there's some portion that will be embarrassed if they put a certain high score on their card, and they don't want mom or dad to even see that embarrassing score. So they take a few strokes off, and that's unfortunate. But I do think it happens. My family's been in public education for decades and decades, and high school kids don't have a lot of conscience. They really don't. There's the really good ones who go on to become professional athletes even, and they work really hard at their craft. But
Yeah.
there's a lot of high school kids that the truth is just, yeah, whatever.
Well, we're not insinuating that that's what happened here. It's
No,
been a
not at all.
robust discussion. Now, I will say that in the
Nope.
chat, Dan Peacock is trying to join us on camera. And Dan, without a way to contact you, I don't know how to add you into this chat, but I think we are near the tail end of this, and I'm trying to remember if Dan is involved with one of these schools.
Dan was
Go ahead,
the
Rob.
Rochester Adams coach he was the Rochester Adams head coach. It was Dan Dan was the one who called out the former head coach of Anchor Bay during that thing, and it was he made his feelings very known, and let's say the Anchor Bay coach didn't react very well, and it was a very
I
ugly
remember
scene
that.
overall.
Yes, I
Yeah, you
believe
remember
so.
that? There was a couple YouTube videos on that
Quite
one.
the
That was
video.
pretty
Quite the
interesting. But
video. Yep.
yeah,
Somebody was going to
yeah,
get thrown through a clubhouse window or something like that. So, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Dan,
That was the Anchor Bay coach said he was going to throw. And Dan's not a big guy, so and this guy's huge, so it was ugly.
Well, the other coach of that regional was Monty Gallagher too, and he was right in the midst of it, of saying that he felt it was wrong. So Monty was also very vocal.
While I have Terry and Rob on here, and Tommy, you also cover a lot more high school than I do, especially when it gets to the state finals levels. We do see some fantastic golf. And by the way, Dan,
Absolutely.
I'm sending you an email here with a link so you can join in just a second. Can you guys talk to the quality of golf in this state? We are blessed to have fantastic high school programs, and lest anybody think otherwise. I'm a huge fan of high school golf. I absolutely love high school golf. My son played it for 4 years. I coached it for 8 years. I stood out in this ridiculous weather for so long, working with the guys. And whenever somebody would qualify for states, and it was always as an individual, because as a team we didn't get there, but I absolutely loved it. It was wonderful, and it still is. But it's even better when it's all done on the up and up. And aside from our conversation here regarding the score of 60, there are too many frustrating instances. And if I took the time to read to all of you all of the comments I've received in private messages in the last 48 hours from coaches talking about cheating, you would be stunned. So let me ask the three of you, when you get to the state finals level, for the most part, because there are walking scorers, I think, with each of the groups, have we gotten past the question marks at the state finals?
So I'm going to go in the way back machine, and we used to have walking scorers, and that was like actually how we started coaching, because the head coach needed somebody to go and walk with the people we had districts, regionals, and then we had states, and we would have walking scorers with each, and they would, at the beginning of each hole, you would have to validate the score with the scorer. We got away from that. I think that a lot of that would make things, all these problems go away if we brought that back. So that doesn't happen. We don't have walking scorers anymore.
And that's what iWanamaker was brought in to help do the job. And like Rob said earlier, it did its job here. It made people go out and watch to see for themselves if they had any inkling of suspicion or whatnot. But before we end, I want to have at least two good news stories for you guys with high school kids. American Dunes hosted an invitational to some of the top teams in the state just a couple of weeks ago, and I was there in person. I didn't watch much golf out on the course, but I was there to talk to people as they finished and that type of thing. And when they announced the winner and the runner-up didn't come up when his name was called. And it took a little while, and he finally realized he knew he really wasn't the runner-up. The score they announced was not his score, and he eventually admitted it. Well, not eventually, pretty quickly, that the score in I Wanamaker for him was wrong. So he relinquished the second place runner-up category there, and that was very noble of him. And about 15 years ago, a young lady named Jacqueline DeBoer won the Division 2 or 3 state title. But during the regular season, she was practicing with a club that she accidentally left in her bag. She discovered it on the fourth tee and immediately flagged down a coach and said, I have to call a 3-stroke penalty against myself because I've got an extra club in my bag that I just forgot to take out. And she was so good, she went on to win the event anyway with the 3-stroke penalty. But the coach who ran that event was so proud of her and knew it was so unusual for that kind of a self-inflicted penalty. He was crying as he explained to all the other girls in the competition, look what this young lady that you compete with did. This is the example you guys need to follow.
That's cool. I'm glad you shared the good news stories. Dan Peacock joins us in here now near the tail end. And Danny, we could take you back to 8 years ago and your escape with your own safety and health after the controversy. But let's bring it up to where we are now in the world of high school golf. And when you first heard about a 60, what were your thoughts?
Well, I relived back in the day, but as I now coach up here and retire from teaching at Roscommon High School, trying to teach the kids the ethic of games and the integrity of the game and things like that. Those things jumped to my mind, of course, again, when I saw the 60, not knowing the situation, not knowing anything, but just going back to what I had to deal with at Rochester Adams and with the boys and the disappointment and the parents being upset and things like that. Knowing the scores from previous to the point when they played the event, those are the things you look at and you try to get. It's a life lesson, right? So, in that situation, of course, I had more insight to that situation. I don't have the insight to the 60, but boy, did it bring up those feelings again. So, and you just question it. Things weren't resolved back then when the situation happened with Anchor Bay and Lance Cruz and those schools and Fraser. So when it's not resolved and now you see it X amount of years forward, you wonder how long can this keep going and how can we help and make it better for the youth and the golf to understand the importance of fairness and being right.
So if you, I've asked this question to the other men, if you had to kind of weigh the, I just don't know the rules versus, oh, I know the rules and I also know how to creatively keep my own score. Where are we in what you're seeing in the world of high school golf?
I think for the mass majority of high school golfers and youth golfers, they understand the importance of fairness and doing the right thing. Um, Again, you guys talked about, and when I stepped in, you talked a little bit about understanding the rules. And kids are going to make mistakes. That's what this is all about. It's a learning experience for everyone involved. Um, but you take it to the next step forward, and when you look at the situation that happened a few years ago, that's not necessarily rules. It's more of the integrity of the game, as I spoke earlier. So you look at those things and you say, how as we evolve as a sport and as a high school event and game, what can we do? And it really relies on the coaching. Coaches need to step in and truly involve kids in the rules and the integrity and how to go about things and doing the right thing is just key. And the respect comes from that itself. Doing the right thing and calling your own self out when things go wrong. And not everyone's going to do it all the time just because they may not know the rules. And in that situation, that's a learning experience. Um, and so you look at that. When you talk about I want to maker and things like that, we don't have walking scores anymore. It is truly on the kids to validate and accept the scores and agree with the scores, and it's all based on that now. So when we look at back in the day when we had a walking score and we could validate the young child, boy or girl, on a score, and everyone's hearing it, and no, I don't agree, and we had that interaction. I believe at that point it was a little bit more of a learning lesson. Now, when four kids or three kids are in a group and we're just pushing a button and it's going through and then it's gone, there's no interaction with, look at the PGA Tour. I mean, I worked the Players Championship this year as a volunteer. They have walking scores still. They still have to validate their scores at every hole, and that's the PGA. So I really truly believe, as much as I like the I Wanna Maker and a lot of the statistical things that are on there, I still believe that human interaction and scoring is just key component to the game of golf.
Yeah, and when it comes to today's high school kids, they don't want to narc on each other. They start falling under peer pressure, and they don't want to be.
Correct.
Funny you
so
say that,
they-
Tommy. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say it's hard for kids today and 20 years ago to say, I think your score is wrong. They don't want to be labeled as Mr. Goody Two Shoes, so they just let stuff go.
Correct.
It's
Agree.
funny you say that. 2016, so 10 years ago, my son is a high school senior, and I'm out watching him at a match. And my son's a very calm young man, and he's very well schooled in the rules of the game, and was never going to be a PGA Tour player, but he was pretty decent in high school. I was standing behind the green while he and his group were, a couple hundred yards away, making their way to their approach shots. And I could see that my son had the scorecard in his hands, and he was talking to another kid from another school. And all of a sudden, my son starts pointing at him in a way that is clearly agitated, which I just don't see. And anybody who knows me, it'd be like me going off on somebody. It just doesn't happen. So I wait for them to come up and, kind of putt out and get things done. And on the walk to the next tee, I said, what in the world was that all about? He said, well, the kid on the prior hole took a double bogey, but he told me he made a par. And I said, you didn't make a par. He says, well, just give me the par now and I'll give you one later on. And my son said, well, that's not going to happen. That's not how this works. And then the kid starts cursing at him and calling him very profane names. And I'm like, what in the world? And so, of course, I go and visit with the coach of the other team. And his answer was, oh, not again. Okay, that's 10 years ago. So we do have precedent for questioning this. So I just want to say this for anybody who's still watching this an hour in, and we're going to wrap it up here pretty quickly. For all of you who've been watching it, including some who have been in the chat saying, why are you even doing this? What's the matter with you people? What's going on? There is ample precedent for this discussion to take place. It doesn't mean that we have some magical Wizard of Oz power to nullify the 60 that was posted. It also doesn't mean that all of us are ready to rush to the parade and bring confetti with us, because there are a number of unanswered questions that are still part of that. And you are all welcome to celebrate. You're welcome to it. I wish nothing but the best for the young man. There's a reason we haven't used his name during this broadcast, because it's not fair to him. But we are having a discussion about veracity of scorekeeping. And in this case, I will simply say it would have done a world of good for his coach to join us, or at least send me a comment other than the two that I put, and just say, listen, here's the background. This kid's been great at this game all year. And maybe here are 2 or 3 people that were walking along with the match, and they'd be happy to confirm it. That's all I'm saying. But
well, I have a suggestion for the people who are criticizing this conversation tonight. They need to go to their local high school and volunteer to be a walking scorer.
Yeah. That's
Amen.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what we don't have. We don't have those witnesses.
Yeah. One last time around the group. Here's the question I'm going to close with for each of you. There's a certificate. You know how like the like your local representative will do a declaration and they'll present it to authority and it's their day, or the governor does a proclamation and signs it. If we had a proclamation that said, on behalf of high school golf in Michigan, congratulations on an all-time record 60 minus 11, would you sign that document, Tom Lang?
I think only if there were parameters in play of it has to be a legitimate long course, then I would.
Define long.
At least 6,200.
Rob McIntyre, are you signing the document for the case we have in front of us?
6,100 yards, 6,000, 6,100. And my opinion still is that, like, the course as it played probably played as a par, 68, like the shorter course at DGC, right? So, but yeah, I agree with Tom. There has to be some type of stipulation that to qualify. There has to be a qualifying statement.
Dan, are you signing off on the document for this particular case?
As I have to be honest, I don't know the entire case. And I don't know the parameters like you guys are talking about, the yardages and things like that. But I would be hard pressed to sign that.
Yeah. Terry Kilday.
I would probably abstain because I don't know the particulars enough. And as I think everybody's read, I have a hard time with it, but I wouldn't go one way or the other with what I've heard so far, and just haven't seen people step up one way or another and really document anything.
Yeah. I would echo Terry's comments, and I will just say congratulations to the young man. 11 under par is incredible. I go back to the probability calculation app I shared a few moments ago, which says that would happen once every 5,214 years. And in the closing moments, I just got another text in from Steve Carlson, Nick's dad. He says, if this is not real scoring, then that takes away from my son's honest work. Cheating is not right. And these people don't understand it takes away from other kids' efforts. And so we have incumbent upon us as leadership in golf to the phrase that Terry Kilday would use is protect the field.
Absolutely.
That's the responsibility that we have. And so again, to the folks at Anchor Bay, have a great celebration. Congratulations on the 60. And we'll leave it at that. I want to say thank you, by the way, Tom Lang, Rob McIntyre, Terry Kilday, Dan Peacock, and everybody else who's been a part of this. It blew up much bigger than I ever thought it would. And that's not because we're after clicks. It's because this discussion is interesting to anybody who cares about high school golf. And you guys have done a great job with it, no matter what some people in the comments have to say. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Yep. Good night, Bill.